Okay guys, for part 2 here, I have remounted the neck here. So we've already plugged and flushed these up, reapplied some masking tape, and I've gone through and I've located this bridge. Now, part of the way I did that was using a straight edge here. So I know that I want my center line of my holes to be, since this is a fender scale length, I want those to be 24 1/4 from our nut. So we take our straight edge ruler here and we come out and we lay that out. Now this isn't a highly precision, but I only need to work in 1/4 of an inch. So this ruler is more than capable of handling that. But part of how I found the center line, so once my neck's set in and it's where it wants to live, I can kind of center this along my side dot, or my dot inlays here, and it typically wants to land right about the dead center of your heel here, or your strap button here, which has already been mounted. So if we look at this, we've got a nice straight line, and I'll make a tick mark. That, in theory, should be center. Now, I'll also butt this flush up against this edge of the neck and keep it tight, and then make another mark, and do the same here, and make a mark. Now, what that allows me to do is double check that. You know, I've showed you guys in the past my handy little ruler here that I like to use. So coming off that center, I can kind of like verify that I am in the middle of that neck, because I've got my 2 outside edge points on the same plane continued down through here, and I can double check and make sure that I am centered. Now from there, we've established our center line, and there's a small tick mark here. Using this, I create a 90 and make sure that I'm set. Now again, you can come back and double check your work right there, smack on 25 1/4, and here we are smack on 25 1/4. Now, once that's kind of established, I can take my bridge and drop that in. And now, how do you know where you are here? Well, you kind of can look at your lines and get it close initially. So you get it where your line is coming straight through your bridge mounting holes here. You can see that and sight that. And then I come back and use the same ruler technique to double check myself. So I'm coming a straight line down through all of my inlays here, and then that's landing right in the middle of my D and my G saddles. So that tells me this bridge is in good position there. Now again, you want to double check. You can kind of flush it up against the outside edge of your neck, and I can see that I'm just touching the grub screw on my low E, and I am doing the same here. So that tells me this bridge is in a really nice position side to side, and it's located essentially. So we've got our our 25 1/4 line coming straight through here. We've established our left to right, all of that. Now we come through and we mark the centers of each of those screws. And I also like to go through and trace out the holes while it's sitting there. A lot of the reason I work with masking tape is so I can see what I'm doing as I go. So, interesting thing here is if you can kind of see the halos through the tape, you can see where the old bridge screws were compared to where they should have been. So you can see this bridge was quite a ways off. Now, a lot of times they'll tell you that you can be within a 30-second one way or the other. You know, some of these are well beyond that. So initially that would have caused us to quite possibly run out of our intonation adjustability here on these screws. You tighten it up so much, you can only go so far back before you bottom out. So in theory, now that we're set where we want to be, same thing coming forward. So we're set where we want to be now. Everything is as it should be. It also caused a very large, very goofy gap in the pick guard here as well. There's some pictures. I'll see if I can upload a picture into the video so you guys can kind of see that. But yeah, there's pictures on the Instagram and the Facebook page. So now that we've established this, we are going to pause the video and go over to the drill press and start drilling these holes. Okay, so we have already showed you where we locate our holes. We're over here on the drill press. I've set up an 1/8 inch brad point bit. Now that is skinny enough that it will be smaller than the threads, but it's large enough that it's about the size of the shank of the screw. Now, that's really what you're wanting there. You don't want to try to fight that, because if you're trying to put too much of the screw in there, you can actually cause some tear out and split the wood. Now, I've got here just a little, escapes me, scribe. So I'm going to actually, since I've got my holes marked here, I'm going to come in and just kind of poke those center lines with this guy. And what that's going to do is, when I go to drop in my drill bit, since it's a brad point bit, it can find my little points here I've marked and give it a good spot for that bit to grab and drop in the exact location where we want it. I've also laid down a little bit of, this is like cabinet liner, basically, kind of stuff. It's real cheap. You can buy a whole roll of it. I use this a lot in the shop. It works pretty well for like non-slip. It'll help protect the finish on this guitar in this case, so we're not laying it right on this particle board. Anyway, yeah, so here we go. We'll fire up the drill and start making our cuts. And there you have it. We've now drilled in a nice straight line, I might add, our new holes. So we can go ahead and peel this tape here, kind of reveal. You'll be able to see how off the holes, the original holes here were. Oh man, it scared the crap out of myself for a second. It's a pickguard screw hole there. I was like, oh no, how did I... yeah, that's another important thing. Don't make the mistake of not double checking yourself before you just start drilling holes here. So, but you can see here where the old plugs were versus where the holes actually needed to be, and you see how they run diagonally out of plane there is really bad shape across the board. I'm not sure how that made it past QC there, but you know, you get what you pay for with this stuff. I mean, you know, there's an argument on the internet every single day about why does guitar that costs this much so much nicer than guitar that costs this much, and blah blah blah. You know, everybody's got a reason. Well, my such and such plays just as nice after I went through and fixed all this crap and replaced every component in it. So, you know, there's a little bit of reasoning behind why it pays to pay for a higher quality instrument here. That is exactly one of those situations. So at this point now, we've kind of we can start putting these screws in. Right now I'm just kind of snugging them in with my fingers to kind of double check and make sure all of our stuff is looking good and working good. It appears like everything's settling in just nice and fine and dandy. There it is. It's also another little tip when you're disassembling things. You know, Ziploc bags are super cheap. I keep a lot of them around when I take things apart. Put all the components and pieces because I work on so many different projects. You can write on these. You can actually label, you know, Jim's guitar, Bob's guitar. So that's kind of a handy tip too, to kind of keep all your things together. And then anytime I replace components on a guitar as well, I tend to put the old parts that I took off in a bag like this and stick it in the case. And then when the customer comes back, we always have a reference point, you know, showing him. It's good to explain why you do your work the way you do it to a customer as well. for peace of mind, as repair guys and luthiers and techs and whatever buzzword of the week you want to use for what we do. It's part of our job to kind of explain to the customer and help correlate the reasoning behind what we do so they have a better understanding. And the biggest reason there is in the future when they come back and they have a problem, they can better describe it to you in terminology that is better. They speak your language a little more. Now they might not have the same skills to do what you do or the tools, but at least they can describe the problem a little bit better in terms, and it helps you get to the bottom of the situation. A lot of times guys come in, hey, I don't know what's wrong with it. It just doesn't play good. You're like, well, what could that be? So that helps. Anyway, long-winded video. I'll get this guy mounted up and move on to I'll do a little fretwork on it, and I'll show you guys some of the stuff in the next videos on this revamp. So thanks for watching.